Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast. This is episode number 544, and our guest is Heidi from Nikwax. And in today's episode, we talk mostly about gear care, but also dive into some related topics such as changes in DWR with PFAS regulations and more. I will say that for myself, and I know for Steve, we've been quite guilty of not taking care of our gear well to get the most life and performance out of that gear. This includes things like apparel, sleep systems, shelters, and more. And so I was really curious to learn from Heidi. She obviously represents Nikwax, which offers all kinds of gear care products. And we do talk about the different products they offer and how they apply, but more than the product itself, you'll learn some foundational elements about gear care and things to do and not do if you want to get the most out of your gear and apparel. If you are enjoying the show, it does help us if you can leave a rating or review in your podcast app. Hit pause and do that now if you can, or even just share the show directly with a friend that may benefit from this one. And as always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback from us, send an email directly to podcast@exomountaingear.com. It'd be great to hear from you. Right now, let's dive into this conversation with Heidi. Well, Heidi, welcome to the podcast. Excited to chat with you today. Let's kick it off with a brief intro, background, who you are, what you do with Nikwax, that type of thing.
Yes, so I work for Nikwax as VP Marketing. I've been with the company 16 years now, and I really have been here that long because I believe in the product and the mission of the company. I have grown up within the outdoor industry. I backpacked a lot as a kid with my family. Our whole motto was, make your everyday life seem like a vacation. So a lot of grueling backpacks up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Since then, I've worked at an outdoor adventure center doing some rock climbing, guiding, worked in outdoor retail for a while, and then came to Nikwax. I still love getting out in the outdoors. I love fishing, fly fishing, especially all of the gear associated with it, although I feel like I catch less fish, but I have more fun. And my family's been surfing recently, a bunch, camping, a little bit of I won't call it overlanding, but we have a pretty cool rig that we like to go out in and just being outdoors. So I love everything about the outdoor industry, helping people get outside, helping people understand how to get the most out of their outdoor gear. And I will be happy to blather on about that for as long as you'll have me.
That's cool. Steve, I know for us, we have some experience in this area, but I feel like you and I both are probably the guys who are also very guilty of maybe not taking as thorough care of our gear as we should. So I'm excited to learn today.
Yeah, for sure. Total neglect on my part till something clearly needs to be treated or taken care of.
Yeah. Heidi, you're in the Northwest now, Pacific Northwest?
Yes,
Okay.
up in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle specifically, but we get out on the Olympic Peninsula a lot when we go outside. So yeah,
Awesome.
all over the place.
It's cool to hear you came from, the far Northeast, New Hampshire, and then now you're in the far Northwest.
Yeah. I mean, both areas are really beautiful, great for outdoor recreation. I'm more of, I like to be able to go get snow when I want it. I don't really want it in my day-to-day life. So
Yeah,
I was able to escape that part of the New England.
right. What's a brief, because I'm very familiar with Nikwax as a brand, meaning just like name recognition, brand recognition. I know in general what Nikwax does. I don't know every product. I don't know anything about the background, the story, what have you. We don't have to dive super deep into that, but I am always curious to learn about companies when I have no idea. Like, how did it start? When did it start? How did it change, grow? So I don't, again, want to spend a big time there, but what is the short story of Nikwax?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short and sweet, but it's kind of fun. So we were founded in around 1977 by a man named Nick Brown. So Nick Wax, Nick's Wax, that was kind of the origin of the name. He made a waterproofing wax for leather hiking boots. At the time, he did a lot of walking, hiking in the UK, very damp there, and the waterproofing products for leather softened the leather and leather boots, making them lose a lot of their structural support and integrity. So he devised his own in a very kind of creative and unique way and started selling it around outdoor stores. It was really great at waterproofing without over softening the leather. And since then, or throughout the 80s and the 90s, he developed, with the help of a lot of, fancy schmancy scientists that we employ, uh, products that waterproof, but also do other things as well. We have been PFAS free since the beginning. So another thing he really prioritized was if you're doing aftercare, you're making products that people are bringing into their homes with their families. So he didn't want to have anything going into people's homes that was going to, potentially cause health issues. So we've been really, really focused on clean chemistry since the start, but also high performance. So that's been a very kind of foundational element of Nikwax since day one. A couple of years ago, he actually retired and sold the business back to the employees. So we're an employee-owned trust, which is wonderful. It can maintain all of the great kind of ethics that Nick founded without us being, bought out by a big conglomerate. And we're just trucking forward with his vision of making products to help people make their year last.
Love that.
When this podcast came up, I want to talk gear care, but because of the current, I don't call it state of the industry, but essentially there's a lot of changes around DWR and PFAS right now. Regulatory, which is obviously affecting the end consumer and products and changeover in that regard. But you mentioned Nikwax always being PFAS free since the beginning. Going back to the 70s, was that an intentional decision? Like, did we know much about PFAS at that point, or was it kind of a called a happy accident that whatever chemical formulation came up at that time ended up being PFAS free? I don't even know, going back to the 70s, like what was on our radar from a scientific perspective about some of these chemicals.
Yeah, so some of the chemicals were on our radar. That we called them fluorocarbons back then, and they were mainly known. A lot of them were known as like the chlorofluorocarbons, which were used in aerosol sprays. But we've known about, again, fluorocarbons. However, we've learned more as the years have progressed. So I wouldn't say necessarily at the start it was completely intentional to avoid them. I think it was more that Nick was a bit of a scofflaw, so he wanted to do things differently than what the other people in the industry were doing. Kind of a unique proposition, if you will. So he devised his own water repellent polymer from unique materials that was not similar to anything that was used really in the industry. We've evolved that over time. I believe at one point in the 90s, he did briefly just look into the possibility of using PFAS, and then he found a bunch of different research studies around the potential health effects, bad health effects of them, and decided, nope, we're not going to use those ever. And so, yeah, from the beginning, great happy accident due to us bucking the trends. And then we did our due diligence. We decided we didn't want to be involved in that, again, especially because we're bringing that raw chemistry into people's homes in a very concentrated way where people don't have, chemical mitigation practices in place, that sort of thing. So it's been an evolution, but we've never used them, and we feel pretty great about that.
The term DWR would be most familiar with our audience, just as a category, if you will. Can you say, like, would Nikwax and these treatments and this aftercare of adding or restoring repellency to different types of fabrics and items, which we'll dive deeper into here in a minute, can that broadly be categorized as a DWR, or would you say it's something altogether because it is different chemistry than what most people think of as a DWR? Does that question make sense?
Yes, no, we're still categorized, and we call ourselves a DWR. That just stands for durable water repellency,
Yeah.
which we are. We're a durable water repellent finish. We use different kind of chemical makeups than others, but it's still a great durable water repellent finish that goes on your gear, maintains breathability, all that good stuff.
I know this isn't your industry, meaning you're not making apparel or creating products using a DWR. You have aftercare.
Mhm.
But what is your, yeah, like your perspective on the state of changes in terms of DWR and products? I'm just always curious to ask this question to different people who have different perspectives, levels of experience. I think there's still a lot of customer confusion on what exactly is happening, and is it obviously it's good from an environmental and personal health perspective, but it seems like there's some unavoidable consequences on performance, at least in the short term, as some technologies get better. But yeah, I know that's really broad, but I'm just curious to hear your kind of perspective and take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think net it's a good thing. We all like being in the outdoors, and if we're using chemicals and things in our products that are causing massive issues with the outdoor environments that we enjoy, I feel like it's on us to try to be innovative to come up with better solutions, instead of just kind of going, "Whoa, what can we do?" Yes, there are a lot of things in the history of humans developing stuff that work amazingly well, but then there's consequences that we found out about later that we go, well, maybe, we can find a different solution to this problem. So with DWR, that's where we're at right now in terms of moving away from these PFAS chemicals. We've known that they are bad for a long time. I mean, if you think about the whole Teflon pan situation, same stuff. Um, that's caused a lot of issues everywhere around the world. And I think that, again, we need to get creative. The challenge in terms of the the product side of things is the timeline got accelerated more than I think a lot of people were anticipating. So people were kind of biding their time a little bit, looking into different solutions, but there wasn't a real big hurry, hurry, hurry until the last couple of years. And then California came with their kind of regulations, and all the brands went, "Oh no,"
Hmm.
and had, oh, pardon me, and had to find, a solution much faster than they were anticipating. So I think that's a big challenge. And then, like you said, the communicating that to the end user. How do we talk to people about these changes? How do we help them understand that, yes, you might have to actually care for your outdoor gear more regularly than you have in the past, because these chemistries, they are durable, they're not permanent, and they will require a little bit of extra love.
This may seem like self-serving question to ask you, but would you say that it's more important to use, it sounds like continued treatments, products like Nikwax for some of the newer PFAS-free DWR to enhance and continue their performance compared to some of the previous DWR-based products that had PFAS then?
To some degree, yes. I mean, we've been making aftercare products since the 70s, so it was always important to care for your gear to help it last longer. It's just these, with the new chemistries, we're working through kind of how they all work. And I think just by regularly caring, and it's easy to care for them, but by regularly caring for your items, it will just keep performing at that great level, and you'll see less of a reduction in performance.
Would it be the case that like one of your treatments would need to be changed at all in formulation to work with a like a call it an old PFAS based or PFAS DWR versus some of the newer DWR that are PFAS free? I mean, is there any changes there for your aftercare and your products?
No, actually, not at all. How our products work is, so DWR, whether it's the newer or the older, it is durable, but it's not permanent. So, all right, we're getting into DWR
Let's do
time.
it. Let's do it.
So everyone has been outdoors in a piece of gear that has DWR on it, and it has started to fail. That's when you start noticing your jacket absorbing water when before the water just rolled right off the surface. That's called wetting out. And that happens due to two different reasons. One, the first, that a lot of people don't really know, is that your item is dirty. So dirt, oil, any sort of contaminant on the outside of your jacket, your boots, your backpack will cause water to want to absorb into that material. The DWR is still there, but it's being compromised by, again, dirts, oils, crud, all those things. So that's your first reason for failure. And that's when cleaning is a really important solution to DWR failure. The second is, again, I mentioned it's durable, but it's not permanent. So DWRs do wear off over time. Depending on the durability of the item and how well that DWR really likes to work with that particular fabric, it varies to some degree how long they last, but it does wear off. And that's when aftermarket DWRs come in. So it more or less fills in the gaps that have been made by that DWR wearing off. And it doesn't work against the existing DWR. It just helps support what is left of the DWR by, again, filling in any areas where that item can now absorb water and makes it so it can no longer do that. That's a very simple way of describing it, I hope.
This probably goes a layer deeper based on all that simple stuff, but is there a reason that Nikwax is only aftercare and not maybe used by some apparel manufacturers or like at the source essentially?
Awareness at the source as well. We've made we called it a hydrophobic down, but a waterproof down industrial product. We've been making that for over a decade now. We've worked with a lot of brands in the outdoor industry to supply them with waterproof down. And then in the last about 3 years, we launched our industrial applied DWR called Direct Dry. And we launched with Outdoor Research this past year. And so you can actually find that at retail on jackets.
Oh, okay, cool. So it is moving that direction a bit.
Yeah, helping our partner brands kind of find a solution, again, because everything's just moving along so quickly right now and everyone's looking for some high performance PFAS-free stuff.
You mentioned this briefly, but I just want to call it out very explicitly in case listeners mentioned it, because it's very simple, practical, helpful for people to have a gauge and almost know, like, should I look at a treatment? Should I look at Nikwax or something? Can you just talk about an easy way to essentially test the condition of your gear in terms of water repellency and know if, rejuvenating or doing aftercare is going to help you with the performance of that piece?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to just take your piece of gear and run it under some water. The water should just kind of roll right off the surface of your gear. If it does start soaking in right away, that's when you're going to want to clean first. Again, we talked about how things can be contaminated with dirts and oils. So your first step is always cleaning. When cleaning, you want to use a technical cleaner. You don't want to use like a household detergent, especially ones with anything like a fabric softener, added fragrances, optical brighteners. If you're a hunter, you really want to avoid. So use a technical cleaner. Nikwax makes a lot of those. Tech Wash is our biggest one. Maintains existing DWR, so it doesn't leave behind residues that would hurt existing DWR. After cleaning, if you test it again and it still is absorbing water, that's when you would want to reapply your waterproofing treatment. We like to say when you're caring for your gear, you want to wash kind of 3 to 5 times before you re-waterproof. You don't have to re-waterproof every single time you clean your gear.
You don't mean like wash 3 to 5 times consecutively and then do a care. You're just saying like over the cycle of washing and using.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
correct. So, a few times a season, depending on what you're doing too. A lot of people, weekend warriors, maybe you're using their gear, a couple times a season. Some people are getting out there every single weekend or more. And so they're going to want to clean more regularly. If you're getting a lot of dirt and crud and, you're a hunter blood all over your gear, then definitely you're going to want to clean a lot more frequently.
Is there any guy, you said don't use household detergents? So yeah, probably just anything that you're buying at the grocery store is too abrasive, like for taking the DWR off?
Yeah, so they don't remove the DWR, but they leave behind these little residues that attract water. That's how a lot of detergents work. They actually leave residues on your gear that attract water, your clothing, that attract water into your clothing, which can help your wash cycle be more effective because your clothes are sucking water into them. So it helps again. It helps overall in laundry, but it's bad for waterproof gear. So household cleaners, generally anything that's like a detergent, a pretty strong detergent, is not going to be great for your waterproof gear. So that's why, again, I know I'm biased, but recommending technical cleaners is really important because it doesn't leave behind that residue, doesn't hurt that water repellency. And I'll say it again, though, like fabric softeners are just the worst possible thing you can do. So definitely do not use those again. But I feel like hunters are actually, to some degree, already a step ahead because you guys don't want anything that has a crazy strong smell or
Mhm.
has those optical brighteners built into it.
Yeah, I think I just generally use like free and clear type stuff. It is supposed to not have things, but I'm sure it does. If you've been washing your gear in that forever, will like one cycle of tech wash get rid of it, or would you need to really kind of do multiple cycles to get all that off of there?
Without seeing how much you use it, I can't say, but generally,
Yeah.
Nikwax or the Tech Wash is good at removing contaminants, including detergent residues. So one pretty good, if you have like a heavier soil cycle on your machine, one of those should
Hmm.
probably do you just fine.
Good to know. We did the rain jacket one years ago, Mark podcast, and I
Yeah.
believe he mentioned the heat from the. I remember distinctly two things. Like one, I was avoiding washing my rain gear because I knew the DWR would wash off. So I was like, which was obviously opposite of what you're saying. And then two, I was not putting it in the dryer. And I remember that guy saying the dryer actually helps realign the DWR treatment. Kind of, I don't know how you describe that, but is that, in your opinion, true?
Yes, although now it's going to be more historical. So heat activation
Okay.
is tied to PFAS. So
Okay.
PFAS-based DWRs are heat activated. Someone once described, again, complete oversimplification on like a molecular level or microscopic level, but a bunch of little fish scales is
Hmm.
kind of a PFAS, but over time they get kind of ruffled and crinkled, sticking up all over the place, and the heat just kind of smooths them back down again. Again, complete visual oversimplification of things, but that's kind of how it's communicated. Nikwax does not require heat to activate. So if your jacket doesn't allow it to be put in the dryer, there are certain brands that say please do not dry this. Certain membranes don't allow heat activation or heat drying. So you can throw in the dryer. That's totally fine too. So now the choice is yours. You don't need to do it.
Perfect.
I'm glad you mentioned membrane there. And some people know this, obviously, some don't, but the difference between an actual membrane versus like the DWR or the Nikwax, which is more on the surface, it's more of that coating. Can you just kind of briefly explain the difference there and why it sounds like Nikwax could be used with different membranes, whether that's Gore-Tex, Event, something else?
Yeah, so membranes are it's a membrane that's usually laminated to a surface fabric. And the great thing about them is that they have a bunch of little holes in them. Usually it looks more like like a bunch of strands all wound together, but the spaces in between are just the right size to allow water vapor molecules, which are smaller, to go out and through, but it prevents water liquid molecules from passing through because they are bigger. So that's the fancy schmancy thing about membranes. Again, does not allow liquid water to go through, but allows water vapor to get out. Membranes generally do require some level of temperature differential between like the inside of the jacket and the outside to make that moisture vapor transfer happen, but that's a different science tale for another day. The thing is, most membrane jackets are laminated to a surface fabric. I'm sure everyone's heard about it. There's a 2.5 layer, it's a 3 layer, etc. That's just how many kind of things are laminated to that membrane. Surface fabric being one, the membrane being two. If it's a 0.5, it's usually what's called like a little kind of just they do like a spray on scrim on the inside that just makes it so it doesn't stick to your skin. Or sometimes they'll laminate another material on the inside, which is where you get a 3 layer. The thing about these is that outer fabric can wet out, as we've talked about. And when that happens, water vapor cannot get through a liquid barrier. So that lovely waterproof breathable jacket no longer breathes the way it should. So that's where DWR is a really important component of a membrane system. It makes sure that that outer fabric does not absorb water so that that jacket maintains its breathability. If the jacket wets out entirely, it is no longer breathing and you're going to get super sweaty and clammy on the inside of that jacket. So again, it's part of a system. The DWR is part of a membrane jacket system. You can also use DWR in items with no membrane at all, and that just the DWR becomes both the water barrier on the outside, and it's still, if it's a good type of DWR, will allow water vapor to pass through it. So you still have that breathability, but if the DWR fails, you don't have that added insurance of the membrane preventing water from coming in from the outside.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go this direction. Let's take gear categories and then talk about Nikwax products, whether that's kind of on the cleaning or the waterproofing side. And you can maybe explain because if people look at the Nikwax line, they're gonna see a lot, right? And you guys had something that was super helpful. I just saw on your website this morning, and it was green for clean and purple for proofing, and that's relating to the caps of the products, which I thought that alone was a good visual indicator. But I do want to understand, just thinking through our gear categories as backcountry hunters, what products may fall where, and then how and when. And we've already discussed some of this from a high level. I just want to make it a little bit more product specific. So let's start with something like rain gear. We just mentioned it, membranes, surface fabrics, all that. What is the specific product or products of Nikwax that kind of fall into cleaning and proofing for something like rain gear?
So to clean rain gear, snow gear, waterproof outerwear, you'd use Tech Wash. That's the product you would use to clean it. To re-waterproof, we have a product called TX.Direct or TX Direct. And we make that in both a wash-in and a spray-on application. So with wash-in waterproofers, sometimes people get confused. They're like, so this is a cleaner? You're like, nope. Two separate things. You do two separate cycles. You would clean first with the Tech Wash in a cycle. And then the second cycle, you would add the TX Direct to your washing machine, and it washes the waterproofing in. It does not clog the membranes. It does not impair breathability. It only adheres to the outer fabric where water is absorbing. I really like it because it kind of eliminates user error. We do have a spray-on product that you would use after cleaning while your jacket is still wet. You'd hang up your jacket, spray it down with the spray-on, wipe off any excess dripping air pooling so you don't get any streaks, and just let it dry either in the air or in your dryer. A lot of people really like the spray-on. They think waterproofing, they think spray. It's kind of like just a connection point. Again, I really like the washing because I don't have something dripping, waterproofing all over my bathtub or bathroom or back porch. But to each their own, both work great.
This washing process, whether it's cleaning or it's this wash-in treatment, makes me think of an area I know nothing about. But I know that as technology has changed, washing machines have gotten, I don't know, call it more advanced or what have you. You'll sometimes see like, do use this, don't use this. Are all of the wash-based Nikwax products roughly safe for any washing machine?
Yes, so we have instructions on all of our products, how to use them in an older top-loading washing machine, which generally uses a lot more water, or a front-loading machine, which generally can be, high efficiency or not, whatever. They use a lot less water. They work great. So we're based in the UK. They've had quote unquote high efficiency machines over there for ages. They just don't call them HE machines like we do here. So our products work great, whether it's kind of an old clunky machine or one of the new fangled shiny ones.
So again, rain gear is an area, and you mentioned this, Steve. I was with you. Is I don't want to clean it. I don't want to, mess, quote unquote, mess it up or uh, decrease the life of a DWR. But it sounds like rain gear should be cleaned. And then, as you said, Heidi, it doesn't mean you need to treat it all the time. Sometimes cleaning is just the best first step. And then, obviously, we talked a bit about how you can maybe assess or test the condition of your rain gear and waterproofing. So, I mean, I think we covered that fairly well, but is there any other like more detailed nuance, et cetera, that you would want to make sure we knew about rain gear aftercare?
I think that's it for rain gear, although I will throw this out there for any type of gear you're washing in your washing machine. Always check your pockets first. I've had so many people washing, like lip balm into their jackets. They get a big, like, greasy stain or, they've got whatever random stuff. So check your pockets, everybody. That's my little one just for any type of gear that you're cleaning.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about down. This could be down apparel, it could be a sleep system, so sleeping bag, quilt. Again, historically, I used to be very guilty of not taking care of down. I realized how much loft I could get from keeping my down gear clean and what better performance it provided. Um, so just start there, and if you can, kind of explain what happens to natural down fibers as they get dirty and why they lose performance.
Yeah, great call out. So down does a really good job of insulating, right? It fluffs up and it creates all that lovely airspace that kind of traps heat. It does that through those little tiny down, they're called plumules, which is a really fun word to try to say. They're not actually, for the most part, feathers. They're like little dandelion puffs of down. And over time, when those either A, if they get wet, which we all know if your down gets wet, then it just flattens out into nothing and you are not very warm anymore. But other things can make them flatten to some degree, as you kind of already alluded to. Dirt, oil, body oil, anything that can get on those little down puffs and cause them to lose their little fluffiness can make it so your jacket is no longer as insulating, or your sleeping bag or your quilt, as it once was. So that's why cleaning is really important, and cleaning with a product that doesn't harm those little down puffs, plumules, feathers. Uh, a lot of household or harsh detergents can also dry them out and make them a bit brittle, which just causes them to break. And then you lose a bit of the loft in your jacket as well. So the proper cleaner and cleaning is probably one of the best ways you can keep the loft of your down gear. So we make a product called Down Wash, which is great for cleaning any down gear. When you are cleaning down, you do want to use a front-loading washing machine. Top loaders with agitators are really harsh on down because it kind of shreds it a little bit. That's a little dramatic, perhaps, but it's pretty harsh on down, that agitator. On the flip side, there are a lot of top-loading washing machines that are agitator-less these days. I would still, to some degree, advise against those because down likes to float. And so if you're trying to wash a top-loading machine that doesn't have an agitator, the down just wants to float to the surface and probably won't get as an effective of a clean as it would in a front loader where it's kind of gently being spun around, falling to the bottom, etc. So for down, I always recommend a front loading washing machine. You can hand wash as well with any of our products. So cleaning, really important. We actually do make a product called Down Proof that you can use in a second load in the washing machine that adds water repellency both to the outer fabric of your gear and to the little down plumules themselves, which is great because it's kind of like an extra layer of defense in case you are caught out in like a mild shower and you're down. It's not going to immediately wet out and go flat on you. So I like to recommend waterproofing your down. Again, more of an insurance policy. You're not turning your down jacket into a rain jacket, but it just helps get the most out of your gear that you can. And then the last, and probably one of the most important bits about caring for down is the drying. So you really want to dry the heck out of your down gear. If there's any bit of moisture left in it, it's still not going to have that level of loft, and you run the risk of it getting mildewy on the inside where you can't even see it. So drying is super critical. You can do it in a dryer on a very low setting. Multiple cycles, many cycles. It takes a while. You can take it out in between cycles and kind of give your jacket or your bag a little bit of a massage to help break up any clumps. Some brands say, hey, throw some tennis balls in there. Some brands say, never do that ever. It's the worst thing you can do. So always follow the care instructions of the item that you are drying. That's my advice. I use wool dryer balls every now and again. But again, if the brand says, no, don't do it, or you could void a warranty and you never want to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the deal on down.
You mentioned this earlier when I kind of asked about Nikwax being involved at the source, not just aftercare, but you talked a bit about technology for down suppliers that Nikwax was doing hydrophobic down and treatment at that level. I mean, I'm familiar with the term. I know that there has been different approaches to that, but can you kind of tell us a little bit about that, or who may be using, that type of down that you guys are sourcing?
Yeah. So it's like a much more industrial application style of kind of what I just talked about with downproof. It's about waterproofing those down feathers so that they resist absorbing moisture and then preserve the loft of the item that they're in. So we've worked with brands all over the outdoor industry and beyond. Right now, we're doing some fun stuff with Thermarest. They have some cool sleeping bags with our gear, working with Mammut on some of their really neat, like kind of high end, kind of mountaineering sort of range jackets. Yeah, and we kind of, again, it tends towards brands that are looking for something that is like really, really high level, people who are, a little bit more extreme. But for me, I think it's great for any level of gear, right? Like you just have that little, again, insurance policy that your jacket's not going to go flat on you right away.
And you said with Downproof, the retail product, something we could purchase, you could use that on untreated down and kind of create some level of repellency.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was unaware that that existed.
How about I got just like pants that are a breathable fabric, came with a DWR on it, but so not rain pants, but just pants that you're hiking in. What product do you recommend to kind of bring back a little DWR to the face of that fabric?
Are they a synthetic material?
Yeah, nylon.
Yeah. Then the same,
Yeah.
the Tech Wash and TX Direct. Same
Okay.
thing. The trick with everyday wear that a lot of people get hung up on is you do still need to be, if you want to add and maintain that water repellency, you do still need to be using a technical cleaner. So
Hmm.
if you add water repellency to them and then you go chuck them in with your Tide Baja Blast or whatever, then it's not going to maintain that water repellent kind of finish that you'd want.
Okay.
You just asked there about synthetics. One thing I was surprised to see when I started looking at the Nikwax website was products for natural fibers or uh, basically waterproofing for items that I don't think of as being waterproof, right? So things like cotton, merino. Obviously, I know that merino insulates when wet, but it doesn't have generally DWR. Or even I think I saw a product that was kind of meant to add some DWR waterproofing to like a fleece, so a technical but generally non-waterproof item. Well, yeah, what is that very similar to just the same approach where that Nikwax is using with like TX, or is it something altogether different when you get into these natural fibers and other synthetics that aren't generally waterproof?
Yeah, so in terms of application method, it's the same. In terms of formula, it's very different. We like to get really nerdy about building formulas around the fibers that they're meant to treat. So yes, we do make a product called Cotton Proof, which adds water repellency to cotton and like cotton blend fabrics. The thing with cotton though is a lot of times the weave is so thick that even you can waterproof the individual fibers, but it's not going to keep the water out. I like to, this is my little anecdote for cotton proof. I like to waterproof my jeans before I travel. That way, if I'm accidentally caught in like a rainstorm in them, I'm not going to stay dry, but they will dry so much faster, like back in my hotel room or wherever, than they would if I didn't treat them at all. And again, a lot of it is just about preventing excess water absorption. So similarly with the one for like polar fleeces. We have a product called Polar Proof. That will cause water to just beat up and roll right off the outside of your fleece items. But again, it's not going to turn into a rain jacket, but it will help prevent that absorption. So again, all of your stuff just stays so much drier. So if you're going back to base camp, all of your gear just isn't saturated to the point of just, dripping water. Um, yeah, we really like to geek out on making waterproofing for different materials.
Yeah, I had no idea that at all an option or existed. It makes me, this is me thinking out loud, so this is perhaps a terrible statement, but as you're describing all that, it made me think of you can't keep water off the item, but you can perhaps keep it from getting in the item and just keeping it on the item, right? So it's like you can't make cotton waterproof. You're not going to keep all moisture off of cotton or like as you said, like the Polar Tech, the fleece. But instead of having it maybe soak all the way in the item, you can just kind of keep it on the surface. And then therefore it's not penetrating as much and then it's going to dry quicker. That's kind of how I'm thinking about that as you described everything.
Yeah, we like to hearken our formulas again. I'm doing some extreme science oversimplifications to like old school phone cords that like wrap around the individual fibers. So it helps keep water out of those individual fibers. But it still can, if it's again a loose cotton weave, it can still weasel its way through the weave to your skin.
That makes sense. All right. Footwear is a huge topic on this podcast, Heidi. We talk about footwear a lot, different types of footwear. Obviously, there's different relevant to our discussion today, different materials, right? Different types of leather, full synthetics, things like that. Give us a rundown on caring for footwear. Obviously, in our case, I would say quote unquote hunting boots, but honestly, a lot of what we use in terms of footwear isn't a hunt specific boot. It's just general hiking footwear, things of that nature. So tell us about different materials, different approaches, care procedures, all the good stuff on footwear.
Totally. Yeah. So to harken back to everything we talked about before, it's always going to be that two-step process, right? You want to clean with something that isn't going to hurt any existing water repellency, and then you want to be able to re-up that water repellent finish. So for footwear, any type of waterproof footwear, we make a product called footwear cleaning gel. It comes in with a little built-in scrubber brush too, and just helps, get all of that dirt and stuff that's stuck to your boots off and prepare the surface for the waterproofing treatment. I will say if your boots are super duper muddy, it's always a good idea to like brush them off or hose them off outside before you do this. Otherwise, your roommate or partner might be getting mad about the state of your kitchen sink. I speak from experience. So yeah, cleaning first, really, really important. A lot of people like to remove laces as well, so you can get up in the tongue, especially if you have like a gusseted tongue situation. And then while the boot, shoe, whatever footwear is still wet, you will apply the waterproofing treatment. So we make 3 different types for different types of material. So we talked a little bit at the start about waterproofing wax for leather, the original Nikwax product, been, tweaked tons of times over the years, but it still does what it used to. It waterproofs, maintains breathability, and does not compromise the support of full grain leather. So it's more like a lotion. You rub it in kind of like a lotion on your boot, wipe off any excess, and you can just let it air dry. You do not want to put your footwear anywhere that is hot for them to dry. It can cause adhesives to melt, which can cause the soles to fall off prematurely. It can cause, if it's a leather shoe, the leather to dry out and crack prematurely. Let them dry away from heat, any type of footwear. I know it's really tempting. And sometimes if we're out in the backcountry and our shoes are just absolutely soaking wet, we really do want to stick them by the fire. It's a dangerous game, especially if it's by an open flame. But if you are able, dry them away from heat source. For boots and footwear that are kind of a fabric and leather combination or all fabric, we make a product called Fabric and Leather Proof. So it's a spray-on, non-aerosol spray-on, easy to use, and it's great for anything, again, that is a combination, which is a lot of footwear these days. Combination footwear is great because it takes a lot less time to break in. It can be lighter weight, all of that. So Fabric and Leather Proof is great for adding the water repellency back to those types of boots and shoes. And last but not least, we make a product called Nubuck and Suede Proof, which is great for all textured leather footwear. So probably not a ton of super suedey hiking boots, but Nubuck is a pretty popular material, and it just has that more of a just barely a texture to it. It's definitely not full grain, but it's kind of in between on like when you cut the leather. Again, it's easier to break in. It's more affordable to use. And the Nubuck and Suede Proof just maintains the look of that type of textured leather. So if you don't want to change the aesthetics of your boots, you can use Nubuck and Suede Proof to keep them waterproof.
And then much like apparel, this is surface level DWR, and then there's a whole nother factor of membranes with, Gore-Tex and quote unquote linings, especially as people refer to them in footwear. These are obviously two separate things. I am curious with footwear in terms of just there's more abrasion in general, both from external forces as well as the footwear, like folding over where the upper meets the tongue and more pressure because tight lacing, a lot more debris. It seems like to me, it'd be even more critical for footwear. And I think that's perhaps why people see more issues with footwear leaking and breaking down over time and losing waterproofness quickly. Is just because the demands that it's all going through. Does that make sense? And does that apply to any of the formulations or like products for Nikwax?
Yeah, no, footwear definitely goes through it. And as you said, it can have a membrane. Sometimes it doesn't. With membranes inside footwear, it's basically it's almost like a little sock that is then, it's kind of cool. But like with jackets, if the outer completely soaks up water, then that boot is no longer breathable. So while you're not going to get water coming in from the outside, your feet are going to start to sweat. So doing your best to maintain the water repellent finish on your shoes is really important if you have a membrane or if you don't. But as you said, it can be challenging, especially if you're out there, if you're stomping through like mud and dirt and all of that. I mean, your shoes are just going to get covered in mud. So yeah, the DWR thing for footwear is really, really important. And that's why also carrying on a regular basis is important because as you come back from that trip and your boots are still coated in mud, especially if it's a leather boot, that mud dries and then it sucks all of the moisture out of any leather, which can cause that to break down prematurely as well. So when you get back from a trip and you've been stomping through bogs and mud and all that stuff, be sure to, let it dry, brush it off, or just give them a nice hose off when you get home. It'll help extend their life quite a lot.
You mentioned breathability in there, and I wanted to ask about this, just broadly. Is there is there downsides to over treating or treating too frequently with Nikwax? Or can you tell me anything inherently about the formulation, or I don't know if it's easy to go in science or not, on how Nikwax would or would not affect breathability? Obviously, this is going to depend on what item we're talking about, what fabric we're talking about, but I'm just curious about the effects of Nikwax on breathability from a pretty big perspective.
Yeah, so Nikwax, again, back to that little phone cord analogy, it attaches to the individual fibers, leaving the spaces in between open so it doesn't impact breathability. And it really only can attach to things that are water absorbent. So it's not going to get in there and like clog up a membrane because the membrane is not water absorbent. Um, so it does maintain breathability on all types of, clothing, apparel, footwear, gear, pretty straightforwardly, really. In terms of overproofing, theoretically, you could overproof your gear. But again, with Nikwax, it goes where the water is soaked in. So if no water is soaking in, it's just kind of going to be a waste. You're going to spend too much money. I think that's probably the biggest downside. That's why cleaning regularly is more important, is because it's actually going to save you about a lot more money in the long run as opposed to waterproofing every single time.
Going back to the tech wash and stuff like that, uh, I'm sure this is individual instructions for each one, but generally, are you washing with cold water or hot water? Do you want to do more aggressive cycles or kind of do like a delicate cycle or something? You have general recommendations?
So we always recommend to follow the care label or the care instructions for that particular garment.
Hmm.
Our products work at pretty much every temperature, every cycle. We generally just recommend cold or warm, regular cycle.
Okay.
When Nikwax offers a bundle and it's like a wash with then the proofing,
Mhm.
what you just said about there being more frequent washing than proofing, is that reflected kind of in the quantities that come with the bundle? I know that's a weird question, but do you get 3 to 4x more washing than you do proofing when you're buying a bundle of product together?
To some degree, yes. It depends on what type of machine you're using and how many garments you're going to be kind of cleaning or waterproofing. So for the most part, yes, in those, we call them duo packs, you'll get more cleaning cycles than you will waterproofing cycles.
Okay, got it. I was surprised to maybe see gear care. We've said the word gear, but we've been talking about footwear and apparel and, somewhat sleep systems for the most part, but things like tents. So tell us about kind of that side of gear care. I've only ever thought of roofing a tent, waterproofing a tent with, approaches of like seam sealing, but not caring for the fabric itself from a long-term perspective.
So we do make two products that are great for cleaning and re-waterproofing and adding UV protection to tents and backpacks and awnings, panniers, any type of kind of gear that is not worn on the body. Um, so they're called Tent and Gear Solar Wash and Tent and Gear Solar Proof. So they're both spray-on applications, mainly designed for, again, bigger items, tents, backpacks, etc. So for a tent specifically, we recommend to care for your tent, you set it up somewhere, a lawn, not in your house. Shake out any debris. That's pretty straightforward, tent care 101. And then give it a hose down with the hose to just kind of get any initial dust and things off the outside. Give it a spray with the Tent and Gear Solar Wash. It has a foaming spray head, so it kind of comes out in these hilarious blurps, but that's so it doesn't all run off of the tent as you're kind of applying it all the way around. Then take like a brush or a cloth and wipe all over your fly mainly, because the fly is really your main line of defense when it comes to tents, unless you're a single wall person. So after that's kind of all rubbed in, spray it again, and then you're going to take your Tent and Gear Solar Proof, spray that all over the fly, wait a couple minutes or so, wipe off any excess to prevent streaking, and let it air dry, and your tent will be cleaner. You can re-up the water repellency that way, so your fly won't absorb water, which is really important. But even cooler is those both apply UV protection to the fibers. So with tents, if they sit out in the summer sun for like a week, that can almost reduce the tensile strength of those fibers by half, which can lead it to premature tearing, all of that. So by helping to protect against this UV rays, you're helping your tent or your backpack last a bit longer. Tent fabrics tend to be a little bit more susceptible to UV damage just because they are so much lighter weight. But it's great to be able to protect your, backpacks, your awnings as well. One caveat, it protects the fibers, it doesn't protect the dyes. So you can still get some, aesthetic results from sitting it out in the sun, but it will help maintain the fibers themselves.
Is the technology of Nikwax much different here since a lot of tent fabrics have more, they're more coating, right? More of a PU than a lot of the fine coatings or applications of like apparel fabrics?
Yeah, it is a different formulation. And again, it's mainly for the exterior. A lot of tents, the PU coating is kind of on the interior. So it's helping prevent that wet out from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going, so a lot of tents, especially the like the bathtub floors, those have a PU coating that's kind of on the inside. And that's its own separate thing. You talked about Seam Seal. They make products that help with that. For us, it's more of the fly and the outer that this is helping make sure the water beads up and rolls off the outside of the fly. It doesn't soak in so that then, it saturates and goes all the way through to the inside.
I feel like we've covered at least the categories that I wanted to cover well, and just in terms of like rain gear, very technical pieces, down, footwear, and then this gear side. Are there other gaps that you want to address? Like whether that's very specific to a Nikwax product or just information, education, knowledge for an audience like ours?
Good question. I think we covered most of it. I mean, just the importance of regular care. You already called out the green for clean, purple for proof, which is awesome. Good eye on that one. We do make a bunch of other products, tons and tons. We have a whole deodorizing line that's great for removing embedded odors and enhancing like the wicking of next to skin layers, including we have one for merino wool, we have one for synthetics. Again, just helping those things dry faster so that you stay more comfortable. But yeah, I think we've covered the main categories for sure. And hopefully people's eyes aren't crossing too much by now about all the different ways they can care for their gear.
Yeah, I should probably start to put it in practice myself.
Can you do like multiple rain jackets at a time, or when you're talking about these TX Direct, is it just one, or you just want to do one rain jacket in the wash cycle?
It does depend on the washing machine and its capacity.
Mm.
For a front loader, for waterproofing, it's generally around two. Again, just
Okay.
because you want to make sure the dilution is correct of the product so that you're getting a good coverage.
Hmm.
If you are washing or waterproofing something really big, like a four-season sleeping bag, we do recommend people take that to a laundromat with like a large sized washer. Because if you try to jam that giant sleeping bag into your home, front loader, it's just not going
Hmm.
to get enough movement to get the water thoroughly through the entire bag. So for certain things, or if you just want to do a really big load, you can just go to a laundromat. Do be sure, sorry, more caveats, that you check the detergent dispenser at laundromats. Those things can get really, really, really gross. And all of that detergent residue could wash into your technical gear. So just give a little look-see, and if it looks like, there's 3 decades worth of scum and residue in there, maybe move to a different machine.
So,
Awesome. This has been helpful, Heidi. Yeah, I'm gonna go do some of my own kind of more research and come up with a plan to take care of my gear better because as I said up front, it's been something I've neglected for sure. So thanks for sharing some knowledge.
Yeah, of course. And if you guys ever have any other questions, I'm here as a resource. Always, as you've learned, always happy to talk about all levels of gear care.
Well, that is a wrap on this one. Be sure to check out the link in the show description if you want to go visit the Nikwax site and learn even more or see some of those products mentioned. If you have any suggestions on guests or topics for a future episode or maybe questions for a Monday Minute episode, which are the Q&A episodes that we do, send that over via email to podcasts@exomountaingear.com. It'd be great to hear from you. As this episode's released, we're right in the middle of hunting season for many folks, so I hope you guys are getting outdoors and enjoying that time. Stay in touch, let us know how it goes. And finally, if you haven't yet, be sure to hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so that you receive future episodes automatically, and we'll talk to you soon.